47 au pairs in 2 years. That was the Sterling family's unenviable record. Some stuck around for weeks, others barely made it through the day. One particularly unfortunate soul lasted a mere 4 hours before bolting from the estate, tears streaming down her face, claiming the little girl was possessed by demons. The child in question was a 5-year-old named Lily Sterling. She had her father's piercing eyes and her late mother's delicate, almost ethereal features. She also happened to be profoundly deaf. But that was not why the au pairs kept quitting. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever screamed into the void and heard absolutely nothing back, then this story will break your heart before it even begins to heal it. Jonathan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, sat in his study, staring at the latest resignation letter crumpled in his hands. Au pair number 47 had lasted 3 weeks. A new record, actually. The letter was infuriatingly professional and polite. But between the carefully chosen words, the message was clear. Your daughter is quite impossible. I cannot help her. No one can. Jonathan crumpled the paper tighter and threw it across the expensive room. His daughter was not impossible. She was just different. She experienced the world in ways that hearing people couldn't possibly comprehend. She felt vibrations instead of sounds. She read faces instead of words. She lived in a silence so profound that most found it terrifying. But Jonathan, he didn't find it terrifying. He found it beautiful. The problem was, he couldn't be there every moment of every day. Running Sterling Enterprises demanded his time. Endless meetings, transatlantic conferences, critical decisions that affected thousands of employees across 3 continents. And Lily needed someone who could bridge the gap between her silent world and the noisy one outside. He picked up the phone and buzzed his assistant. Schedule another round of interviews, he instructed. I want candidates with extensive experience in deaf education. ASL proficiency is mandatory. And this time, screen for patience. I'm tired of people who give up so easily. Yes, sir, his assistant replied. But sir, if I may be so bold, we've exhausted every qualified agency in the tri-state area. Perhaps we should consider an alternative approach. Jonathan frowned. What kind of alternative are you suggesting? There's a woman, Emily Carter. She works in the kitchen. She's been with the household staff for about 6 months now. I've noticed that Miss Lily seems calmer when she's around her. Jonathan's frown deepened. A kitchen staff member? Yes, sir, Emily Carter. She's 26 years old. No formal education in deaf studies, I'm afraid. But she learned ASL to communicate with her younger brother, who was born deaf. She is unconventional, but she might be worth considering. Jonathan was silent for a long moment. A humble kitchen staff member with no impressive credentials. It went against every business instinct he possessed. You hired experts, specialists, people with advanced degrees and certifications. But 47 experts had all spectacularly failed. Bring her to my study, he said finally. I want to meet her, now. This story is already resonating with hearts around the world. If it's touching yours, the support button below is a way to contribute to more content like this. Every contribution helps bring these stories to life, you know. Emily Carter had been elbow-deep in soapy water, washing dishes. When the summons came, at first, sheer panic set in. She thought she was being fired. That was usually why kitchen staff got called to the big boss's study. Someone had complained about the food, she assumed. Someone had noticed her sneaking extra cookies to the landscaper's kids. Someone had finally decided that a poor immigrant woman didn't belong in such a grand estate. She quickly dried her hands on her worn apron and followed the butler through hallways she had never been allowed to even glance at before. The study was overwhelmingly enormous, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes she could only dream of reading, supple leather furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment building, and behind the imposing mahogany desk sat Jonathan Sterling. Emily had seen him before, of course, from a respectful distance. At those excruciatingly awkward staff meetings where all the household employees lined up like soldiers for inspection. He was undeniably handsome, in a severe, almost intimidating way. Sharp, chiseled features, cold, calculating eyes. The kind of man who looked at the world like it was just another complex problem to be meticulously solved. And he was looking at her, that way now. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice surprisingly deep and resonant. "Please, sit." She perched nervously on the very edge of a chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I understand you know sign language." It wasn't a question. Emily nodded anyway. "My brother," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "He was born deaf. I learned, so we could communicate." Jonathan studied her face intently, searching for what? She couldn't even begin to guess. "My daughter Lily is also deaf," he said. "She's had difficulties connecting with her caretakers. I'm told you've had some interactions with her." Emily's mind raced, replaying those stolen moments with the lonely little girl. Lily sometimes wandered into the kitchen, drawn by the alluring smells of baking, or perhaps just desperately seeking an escape from the seemingly endless parade of strangers trying, and failing, to take care of her. The first time, Emily had simply offered a friendly wave. Lily had stared back at her with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. The second time, Emily had tentatively signed a simple greeting. "Hello, I'm Emily." Lily's eyes had widened in surprise and recognition. Then, slowly and deliberately, she had signed back. "You talk like my mommy." Emily's heart had shattered into a million tiny pieces. "She has visited me in the kitchen," Emily told Jonathan. "A few times. We have talked. Signed, I mean." "What do you talk about?" Jonathan inquired, his voice laced with a hint of curiosity. Emily smiled despite her overwhelming nervousness. "Food. Mostly, she loves chocolate chip cookies. She doesn't care for vegetable, but I told her that carrots help you see in the dark. She asked if that meant she could see sounds. I told her that was a beautiful way to think about it." Something subtly shifted in Jonathan's tightly controlled expression. The usual coldness cracked ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly. "She talked to you about seeing sounds?" Emily nodded. She paused, carefully searching for just the right words. "She's not impossible, Mr. Sterling. She's just waiting for someone who will meet her where she is, instead of constantly trying to drag her somewhere else." The room was silent, painfully silent, for a long, drawn-out moment. Then Jonathan did something Emily wasn't expecting. He stood up abruptly and walked over to the expansive window, gazing out at the manicured lawns. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost vulnerable. "Her mother was deaf too," he said quietly. "My wife, Elizabeth. She died when Lily was 2. Car accident. Lily was in the back seat. She miraculously survived without even a scratch. But she saw everything." Emily's breath caught in her throat. For the first year after, Lily wouldn't communicate at all. Not signing, not gestures, nothing. The specialists said it was trauma. They said she needed intensive therapy. They said she needed time. They said a lot of things. He turned back to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of grief and frustration. What she really needed was someone who understood, someone who spoke her language, literally and figuratively. But I couldn't find that person. I tried 47 times. I tried. Emily stood up slowly, her heart aching for both Jonathan and his daughter. "Mr. Sterling, I'm not a specialist. I don't have fancy degrees or specialized training. I'm just a kitchen staff member who knows how to talk with her hands." "I know," Jonathan said, his gaze unwavering. That's exactly why I'm asking you. Will you try? Try what? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. To reach my daughter, not as an au pair, not as a specialist, just as someone who might understand her. Emily thought about her brother back home, about the years of learning sign language together, about the way his face lit up when someone bothered to communicate in his world instead of demanding he join theirs. She thought about Lily, that beautiful, silent, suspicious little girl who had asked if she could see sounds. Yes, she said, I will try. The first week was a disaster. Lily wanted nothing to do with the new arrangement. She had been burned too many times by strangers who promised to help and then disappeared. She hid in closets. She refused to eat. She threw tantrums so violent that the other staff members crossed themselves and muttered prayers. Emily did not push. She simply existed in Lily's space, sat outside the closet door, signing stories to no one, left little presents, a chocolate chip cookie, a feather she found in the garden, a drawing of a girl surrounded by musical notes, even though music was something Lily would never hear. On day 6, the closet door opened a crack. Emily pretended not to notice. She continued signing a story about a princess who could talk to butterflies. After a few minutes, a small hand emerged. It grabbed the cookie Emily had left nearby, then retreated. Progress. On day 9, Lily sat beside Emily while she signed, still silent, still suspicious, but present. On day 12, Lily signed her first word to Emily since the arrangement began. Why? Why what? Emily signed back. Why do you stay? Emily thought carefully before responding. Because everyone deserves someone who speaks their language. Lily's face was unreadable. Then she signed, the others did not stay. I know. They said I was broken. Emily felt anger rise in her chest, not at Lily, at every single person who had ever made this child feel less than whole. You are not broken, Emily signed firmly. You are different. Different is not broken. Different is just different. Lily stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she moved closer, close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. They sat like that for an hour, not signing, not doing anything, just being together in the silence. And Emily knew, in that moment, that something had shifted. Jonathan watched the security footage in his study that night. He had cameras throughout the estate. A necessary precaution when you were one of the wealthiest men in the country. But lately, he found himself watching only one set of feeds, the ones showing Emily and his daughter. He watched Lily emerge from the closet for the first time in days, watched her sit beside Emily, watched the conversation he could not hear, but could read in their hands. You are not broken. Different is not broken. His throat tightened. His wife had said something similar once. The night they met, at a charity gala where she was the only deaf person in attendance. He had tried to speak to her, fumbling through basic signs he had learned from a phrase book. She had laughed at his terrible form. Then she had signed, "You are trying." That is more than most people do. He had fallen in love with her that night, with her laugh that had no sound but lit up her entire face, with her hands that moved like dancing, with the way she experienced the world in colors and vibrations instead of sounds. And then she was gone. And all he had left was a daughter, who had inherited her mother's silence, but none of her joy. Until now. He watched Emily sign another story to Lily, watched his daughter lean closer, captivated by hands that moved like her mother's once had. Maybe, he thought. This was what he had been searching for all along. Not an expert, not a specialist, just someone who understood. 3 weeks into Emily's new role, Lily did something unprecedented. She laughed. It happened in the garden. Emily was teaching her about flowers, signing the names of each variety and making up stories about their personalities. "The roses are snobby," Emily signed. "They think they are better than everyone because they smell nice. But the daisies do not care. They just dance in the wind and have fun." Lily had stared at her with those serious dark eyes. Then her face cracked into a smile. And then came the laugh, a sound that Lily had never heard herself make. But that rang through the garden like bells. Emily froze. Tears sprang to her eyes before she could stop them. "What is wrong?" Lily signed, her smile fading to concern. "Nothing is wrong," Emily signed back, wiping her face quickly. "I am just happy. That is the first time I heard you laugh." Lily looked confused. "You heard me." Emily realized her mistake. She had forgotten, for a moment, that Lily experienced the world differently. "I heard you with my ears," she signed carefully. "But you can hear things other ways too. You can hear with your eyes, or with your hands, and with your heart." Lily considered this. "Can I hear my laugh with my heart?" Emily knelt down so they were eye level. "Put your hand on your chest." Lily obeyed. "Now laugh again." Lily looked uncertain, but she tried. A small giggle escaped her lips. "Did you feel that?" Emily signed. "That vibration in your chest? That is your laugh. That is how you can hear it." Lily's eyes went wide with wonder. She laughed again, harder this time, her hand pressed firmly over her heart. "I can feel it," she signed excitedly. "I can hear it." What neither of them knew was that Jonathan was standing at the window above, watching the entire scene, and for the first time since his wife's funeral, tears were streaming down his face. What would you have done in Emily's position? Would you have taken the chance on a little girl the world had given up on? Leave your answer in the support button below. The change in Lily was remarkable. Day by day, the walls she had built came tumbling down. She started eating at the table instead of hiding food in her room. She stopped running from strangers. She even began to wave at the landscapers' kids, who had previously crossed to the other side of the property whenever they saw her coming. But the most remarkable change was in her communication. Before Emily, Lily had used sign language sparingly, grudgingly, like it was a tool she resented needing. Now she signed constantly. Questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do butterflies go when it rains? If I cannot hear thunder, does it still make a sound? Emily answered every question patiently, sometimes with facts, sometimes with stories, sometimes with, "I do not know. But we can find out together." It was that last response that seemed to mean the most to Lily. We, together. Words she had stopped believing in after her mother died. 1 month into Emily's new role, Jonathan requested a meeting. Emily arrived at his study, nervous. The last time Emily had been here, she was just part of the kitchen staff, with nothing to lose. Now, she had everything to lose. Lily's trust, this strange, new life she was building. "Please, sit," Jonathan said. She sat and waited. Jonathan was silent for a long moment, studying her face, with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You've done something remarkable," he finally said. "In 1 month, you've accomplished what 47 professionals couldn't do in 2 years. Emily shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do anything special, Mr. Sterling. I just listened to her. That is exactly what makes it special." Jonathan leaned forward. No one else bothered to listen. They came with their theories, and their methods, and their assumptions. They decided who Lily should be. Instead of discovering who she already was, Emily didn't know what to say. So she said nothing. "I have a proposal for you," Jonathan continued. "I'd like you to become Lily's official guardian. Not an au pair, not just a caretaker, a guardian. Someone with the authority to make decisions about her education, her health, her well-being." Emily's breath caught. "Mr. Sterling, I'm just kitchen staff. I don't have the qualifications. You have something better. You have her trust. Jonathan's voice softened. My daughter hasn't trusted anyone since her mother died. Not her grandparents, not the specialists, not even me. Most of the time. But she trusts you. Emily felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. There would be conditions. Of course, Jonathan said. You'd need to continue your education. Learn about deaf culture and history. Study child development. I'll pay for everything. And your salary would increase substantially. Emily thought about her tiny apartment. Her brother back home who needed medication she could barely afford. Her mother working double shifts at a factory. This was more than she had ever dreamed of. But something held her back. Mr. Sterling, she said slowly, I need to ask you something first. Go ahead. Why me? The real reason. You're one of the richest CEOs in the country. You could hire anyone, the best deaf educators in the world. Why a kitchen worker with no credentials? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Because, he said, finally, you remind me of my wife. Emily froze. Not physically, Jonathan clarified quickly, but the way you are with Lily, the way you meet her in her world. Instead of demanding she come to yours, my wife was like that. She used to say that being deaf wasn't a disability. It was just a different way of experiencing the world. She made me believe that. His voice cracked slightly. When she died, I forgot. I got so focused on fixing Lily that I forgot she didn't need to be fixed. She just needed to be understood. Emily nodded slowly. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. And so are you. Miss Carter. Different circumstances. Different lives. But the same gift. Emily took a deep breath. She thought about Lily, about the way the little girl had started running to greet her every morning, about the questions that never stopped, about the laugh that rang through the garden like bells. I accept, she said. Jonathan's face broke into something that might have been a smile. Good. Welcome to the family. The next few months passed in a blur of changes. Emily moved out of the staff quarters and into a suite near Lily's room. She enrolled in online courses for deaf education. She learned about cochlear implants and hearing aids and assistive technology, and made informed decisions about which ones Lily might want to explore someday, when she was old enough to choose. Most importantly, she built a world where Lily could thrive. They developed routines. Morning walks in the garden where they signed about everything they saw. Afternoon lessons that mixed academics with art and storytelling. Evening movies with captions that Emily would sign along to, adding her own commentary. You're making the man sound silly, Lily signed once during a dramatic film. He doesn't sound that dramatic in the captions. Emily grinned. I'm making it more interesting. The director should thank me. Lily laughed, that laugh that still made Emily's heart swell every time she heard it. But there were challenges too. Lily had gaps in her education. 2 years of rotating caregivers had left her behind in reading and math. She struggled with concepts that hearing children learned naturally through conversation and overhearing. Emily worked with her patiently. They read books together, Emily signing each page while Lily followed along with the text. They did math with cookies, which made multiplication much more appealing when you could eat the answer. Slowly, the gaps began to close. But the biggest challenge came from an unexpected source. Victoria Sterling, Jonathan's mother, came to visit. She was a formidable woman, 70 years old, but sharp as a knife. She had disapproved of Jonathan's marriage to a deaf woman. She had disapproved even more when Lily was born deaf too. And she certainly disapproved of a former kitchen staff member being appointed as her granddaughter's guardian. I don't understand your decision, Victoria said to Jonathan over dinner that first night. Emily had been excluded from the family dinner. Of course. She was eating in her room with Lily, practicing signs for new vocabulary words. You've never understood my decisions. Mother, Jonathan replied calmly. "This is different. You're entrusting my granddaughter's future to a servant. A woman with no education, no credentials, no standing in society. She has something more important than any of those things. And what is that? Lily's trust." Victoria scoffed. "Children trust anyone who gives them sweets. It's not a basis for guardianship." Jonathan set down his fork. "When was the last time Lily let you hold her hand?" "Mother." Victoria was silent. "She hasn't, has she?" Jonathan continued. "In 4 years, my daughter has never voluntarily touched you. She hides when you visit. She has nightmares for days after you leave. That's not my fault as the child is disturbed." Jonathan's eyes went cold. "My daughter is not disturbed. She's deaf, and she's traumatized, and she can read people better than anyone I've ever met. If she doesn't trust you, perhaps you should consider why." The dinner ended shortly after that. Victoria retreated to the guest wing, and Emily pretended she hadn't heard the whole argument through the heating vents. But she knew this wasn't over. Women like Victoria Sterling didn't accept defeat gracefully. She was right. The next morning, Victoria requested a meeting with Emily. Emily arrived at the morning room to find Victoria sitting ramrod straight in a chair that looked more like a throne. Tea had been served. Emily wasn't offered any tea. "Miss Carter," Victoria began, her voice sharp, "I'll be direct. I do not approve of your position in this household." Emily nodded calmly. "I understand, Mrs. Sterling." "Do you? Really?" Victoria's eyes narrowed, piercing. "Your kitchen staff, a foreigner, a woman with no formal education, no family connections to speak of, no standing whatsoever. And yet, my son has placed you in charge of my granddaughter's life." "He placed me in charge of her care," Emily corrected gently, her tone even. "Lily's life is her own." Victoria's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "Semantic games. The point is, you are unsuitable. I have connections with several excellent institutions that specialize in deaf children. Boarding schools, where Lily could receive a proper education among her peers, with trained professionals and instead of kitchen staff." Emily felt a chill run down her spine, her heart beginning to race. "You want to send her away?" she asked, the words barely a whisper. "I want what's best for her," Victoria declared, her voice firm. "Lily has never been to school. She's barely left this estate since her mother passed. Sending her to an institution would terrify her? Children adapt, Miss Carter. It's what they do. Not all children," Emily countered, her voice rising slightly but still controlled. "Not all trauma. Mrs. Sterling, I understand your concerns. Truly. If I were in your position, I'd be skeptical too. But I've spent months building trust with your granddaughter. Trust that took 47 au pairs, 2 years, to fail at building." "Because you bribed her with cookies," Victoria scoffed. "Because I learned her language," Emily retorted, standing her ground. "I learned how she sees the world. I stopped trying to make her fit into a hearing world and started creating space for her, in her own world." Victoria stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes. Something. That might have been doubt, or even surprise. Then, she deliberately picked up her teacup and took a slow, measured sip. "We shall see," she said finally, placing the cup back on the saucer with a clink. "I'll be staying for the next month, observing. If, at the end of that time, I'm not satisfied with my granddaughter's progress, I'll be discussing alternative arrangements with my son." Emily nodded once, firmly. "Fair enough." Victoria turned to leave, then paused at the door, her back still turned. "Mrs. Sterling?" Emily asked quietly, stopping her. "One more thing." "Yes?" "Your granddaughter is remarkable, not despite being deaf, not because of it, just as herself. Lily, I hope that someday you'll see that. She left before Victoria could respond, leaving the older woman standing alone in the doorway. The month of Victoria's observation was the longest of Emily's life. Every day, she felt eyes on her, watching, judging, evaluating, waiting for her to make a mistake. But Lily made it easier than Emily expected. The little girl seemed to sense the tension in the air, and in her own remarkable way, she rose to meet it. She showed off her reading progress, signing along to picture books with growing confidence. She demonstrated the math tricks Emily had taught her, calculating sums with her fingers flying. She even started a journal, writing her thoughts and questions in a mix of English and signed glosses that Emily helped her translate. But the real turning point came 3 weeks into Victoria's visit. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria had been watching Emily and Lily work on an art project in the garden. Lily was painting a butterfly, her tongue poking out in concentration. Emily signed something to Lily. Lily laughed. Victoria didn't understand any of it. "What did you say?" Victoria asked Emily, her voice still imperious. But there was something underneath. Curiosity. Perhaps. A touch of desire to be involved. Emily hesitated for a moment, then signed the words, while speaking them aloud. I told her that butterflies can't see the color red. So, her red butterfly is invisible to other butterflies. She said that makes it a superhero butterfly, invisible to everyone, except us. Victoria stared at Lily's painting. The butterfly was indeed bright red, surrounded by colorful flowers and sunshine. Victoria started, then stopped, unable to continue, for a long moment. No one spoke. The sounds of the garden, the birds, the wind in the trees were the only things to be heard. Then, Victoria did something unexpected. She walked to where Lily was sitting, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any moment. Lily looked up, her expression guarded, unsure of what was happening. Victoria pointed at herself. Then, she made a sign that Emily recognized instantly, the sign for grandmother. Lily's eyes went wide with surprise and just a little hint of hope. Victoria tried another sign, butterfly. It was clumsy, awkward, the fingers in all the wrong position. She clearly didn't know what she was doing, and she was probably terrified. But Lily understood. The little girl stared at her grandmother for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and gently adjusted Victoria's fingers into the correct position. Like this, Lily signed, her small hand guiding her grandmother's. Victoria tried again, better this time, still far from perfect, but better. And then Lily did something she had never done before. She took her grandmother's hand, gently, briefly, but unmistakably. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, and she let out a small sigh. Emily watched from a distance, her own vision blurring with emotion. She understood what had just happened. Victoria had stopped trying to change Lily. She had started trying to understand her. It was a small step, but it was everything. That night, Victoria found Emily in the hallway. "Miss Carter," she said, her voice completely different than before, softer, more humble. "I owe you an apology." Emily blinked in surprise. "Mrs. Sterling, you don't need to apologize." "Yes, I do." Victoria straightened her spine, but her eyes were still vulnerable and watery. "I've spent 4 years blaming my granddaughter for being different. I told myself it was concern for her future, but it was fear. Fear of what I didn't understand." Emily nodded slowly, understandingly. "You showed me," Victoria continued, her voice trembling slightly. That understanding is a choice. I watched you choose it every day, for 3 weeks, and today, when I tried to make that choice, myself, my granddaughter, held my hand for the first time. Emily smiled warmly. She held your hand because you tried. That's all she's ever wanted, for people to try. Victoria was quiet for a moment, lost in thought. Then she said, with certainty, I will not be recommending alternative arrangements. To my son, you're exactly where you should be, Miss Carter. And I am grateful. She walked away before Emily could respond, leaving Emily standing alone in the hallway, overwhelmed with emotion. But Emily understood. Some people showed love through grand gestures. Victoria Sterling showed it through small concessions, and this was the biggest concession she had ever made. The next morning, Jonathan found Emily in the garden, tending to the flowers. My mother spoke to me last night, he said, his voice tinged with surprise and relief. She told me she was wrong about you. Emily looked up from the flowers she was tending and managed to smile. She's not wrong. Often, is she? Never, Jonathan admitted with a hint of a smile himself, which makes this particularly significant. Emily laughed softly, the tension of the past month finally starting to dissipate. I didn't do anything special. I just gave Lily the space to be herself. Your mother saw that. You did more than that, Jonathan said, his eyes searching hers. He sat down on the bench beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. You changed everything, not just for Lily, for my entire family. Emily felt her cheeks warm under his gaze, and she suddenly became aware of just how close he was. Mr. Sterling, I was just doing my job. Emily, he said softly, her first name. He had never used her first name before, and it sent a small shiver down her spine. What you do goes far beyond a job. You've brought light into this house. That's been dark. For 4 years. Their eyes met and held. Something shifted between them, a feeling that made Emily's heart suddenly race. She quickly looked away. I should check on Lily. She's supposed to be practicing her handwriting. Emily, Jonathan said again. Wait. She stopped, turning slightly. There's something I need to tell you, he began, his voice a little strained. Something I've been struggling with for weeks now. Emily turned fully to face him. Her heart was pounding in her chest. Jonathan took a deep breath. When Sarah, my wife, died, I honestly thought I'd never feel anything again. I buried myself in work, in the endless search for the au pair, for Lily, anything to keep me from confronting the emptiness. Emily nodded slowly, waiting, listening intently. And then you came along? You walked into my daughter's life and you changed everything? But did you also walk into mine? Emily's breath hitched in her throat. I find myself really looking forward to dinner, Jonathan continued, his eyes meeting hers. Not for the food, but because you're there, telling Lily stories in ASL, stories that make her laugh. I find myself working less because I want to get home and watch you both in the garden. I find myself feeling again. Mr. Sterling, Emily whispered, almost breathless. Jonathan, he corrected gently. Please ask when we're alone. Jonathan. Jonathan, Emily said, the name feeling unfamiliar, almost intimate, on her tongue. I know this is probably inappropriate, Jonathan admitted, looking down for a moment before meeting her gaze again. You work for me. You're my daughter's guardian. There are 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't say what I'm about to say. Then, maybe you shouldn't say it, Emily suggested softly. Maybe? He paused, considering. But I've learned something in the past 4 years. Life is short. Tragedy doesn't give you a warning before it kicks down the door, and some things are worth the risk. He reached out slowly, gently taking her hand, just like Lily had taken Victoria's hand that day. "Emily Carter, I think I'm falling in love with you. And I think perhaps you might be falling in love with me too." Emily's heart felt like it was going to beat right out of her chest. Every rational thought, every sensible part of her brain was screaming warnings. This was her employer. This was complicated. This could ruin everything. But her heart didn't care about rational. She thought about the past few months, the way Jonathan's eyes softened whenever he watched her with Lily, the conversations they'd had over dinner, stretching late into the night, the way he'd started learning ASL to communicate better with his daughter, and she realized now, with her. "I am," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I'm falling. I have been, for a while now." Jonathan's face transformed. The sharp CEO disappeared, and in his place was a man. A man who had lost everything and was terrified of hoping again. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. "I don't know how to balance being your employer and being whatever we might become, but I know that I want to try. If you're willing." Emily squeezed his hand in return, a small, hopeful gesture. "I'm willing," she said, her eyes locking with his. And somewhere, upstairs, in the house, a little girl was watching from a window, a slow, happy smile spreading across her face. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could read their body language. She could see the way they were looking at each other. She could feel the vibrations of something changing, and for the first time since her mother died, Lily felt like maybe, just maybe, she might get a family again. The next few months brought more changes than Emily could have ever imagined. She and Jonathan took things slowly. Dinner dates after Lily was asleep, walks in the garden when they could steal a moment alone, long conversations about their pasts, their fears, their hopes for the future, but they also involved Lily. In their growing relationship, they asked her permission. They made sure she understood. They let her set the pace. Lily's response was unexpectedly enthusiastic. "Does this mean Emily will stay forever?" She signed to her father one evening, her brow furrowed with hope. Jonathan knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Would you like that?" Lily nodded, vigorously, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "I don't want more new au pairs. I want Emily, always." Jonathan smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Then I'll do my best to make Emily want to stay, always." Lily threw her arms around him, squeezing him tightly. Then she ran to Emily and hugged her too. "Thank you," she signed, her small hands clumsy but earnest. "Thank you for teaching Papa how to be happy again." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She hugged Lily back, her heart overflowing. The engagement came 6 months later. Jonathan proposed this in the garden, in the exact spot where Emily had first taught Lily about butterflies. He got down on one knee, on the soft green grass, and signed the question, stumbling over some of the word, but getting the meaning across, his eyes shining with love. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Will you be Lily's mother?" Emily said, "Yes," to all three questions. Lily was the flower girl at the wedding. She walked down the aisle, throwing rose petals and grinning at everyone, signing greetings to the guests who understood and waving excitedly at those who didn't. Victoria was there too, sitting proudly out in the front row. She had been taking ASL lessons for months. She still made mistakes, but she tried, and that was what Mattered, the ceremony was conducted in both spoken English and American Sign Language, so Lily could understand every single word. The officiant, who had learned sign language specifically for this event, signed the vows. Alongside speaking them, every guest received a program that included basic signs for "I love you," "Congratulations," and "Family." When the officiant asked if Emily took Jonathan to be her husband, she said, "I do," with her voice, and signed it with her hands. Jonathan did the same. When asked if he took Emily, his signing had improved dramatically over the past year. He still made mistakes, sometimes, but he tried, and that was what mattered. Before they exchanged rings, Jonathan did something that hadn't been in the rehearsal. He turned to Lily and knelt down, so he was face to face with her. "Lily," he signed, his hands steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I'm not just marrying Emily today. I'm promising to be the best father I can be, to always try to understand you, to always make sure you know how much you are loved." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She threw her arms around her father, hugging him tightly, her heart full. The guests, most of whom could not understand sign language, watched the exchange and with confused but happy smiles. But those who could sign were crying openly, tears streaming down their faces. When the officiant asked if there were any objections, Lily signed, her hands flying with playful urgency. "Only if they don't promise to let me have chocolate cake." At the reception, the guests who understood had burst into laughter. Jonathan signed back and grinning, "I promise." And then, finally, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Lily burst into applause, her hands waving enthusiastically in the air. The reception was filled with music and dancing. Emily worried that Lily would feel left out, but Jonathan had planned for that too. He had hired a DJ who specialized in events for the deaf community. The music was played through a bass-heavy sound system that sent vibration through the floor. Lily could feel the beat through her feet. "I can dance," she signed to Emily, her face lit up and with pure joy. "I can feel the music." Emily took her hand, and they danced together, mother and daughter, not by blood, but by choice, by love, by a bond that transcended sound. 1 year after the wedding, a true miracle happened. Lily received a cochlear implant. It was entirely her choice. Emily and Jonathan had presented her with all the options. They'd connected her with deaf adults who used implants, and deaf adults who preferred not to. They'd let her ask questions, process information, at her own pace. In the end, Lily decided she wanted to try it. "I want to hear Emily's voice," she signed. "I want to hear Papa's voice. I want to know what butterflies sound like." The surgery went well. The activation day came 2 months later. Emily held Lily's hand tight as the audiologist turned on the device for the first time. There was a moment of complete silence. Then, sounds began to filter through. Lily's face transformed. Confusion, surprise, wonder. "I can," she started signing, then stopped. Her eyes went wide. Emily leaned close. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "Can you hear me?" Lily burst into tears. It was overwhelming. The world was suddenly full of sounds she had never imagined. The hum of the air conditioning, the rustle of Emily's sweater, the audiologist's keyboard clicking. But through all the noise, one sound stood out above the rest, Emily's voice. "You sound like sunshine," Lily signed, tears streaming down her face. "You sound exactly like sunshine." Emily pulled her into a hug, and for a long moment, they just held each other, surrounded by sounds that Lily was hearing for the very first time. But the implant didn't change who Lily was. Not at all. She still used ASL. She still identified strongly with the deaf community. She still experienced the world in vibrations, colors, and feelings that hearing people would never fully understand. The implant was just a tool, like glasses for someone who couldn't see well. It didn't fix her, because she had never been broken. It just gave her more options, more ways to experience the world, more doors to open, and that, Emily knew, was exactly right. 5 years after Emily walked into the Sterling estate as kitchen staff, she stood on a stage at the National Deaf Education Conference. Hundreds of educators, parents, and advocates filled the auditorium. They had come to hear her speak about inclusive education, about meeting children where they are. Instead of demanding they come to you, about the power of understanding, Emily took a deep breath and began. 5 years ago, she said, signing as she spoke so everyone could understand. I was washing dishes in a CEO's kitchen. I had no degrees, no certifications, no standing whatsoever in the world of education. She smiled at the memory. But I had one thing that really mattered. I knew what it was like to communicate in 2 languages, to live between 2 worlds, to love someone who experienced reality differently than I did. In the front row, Jonathan sat with Lily beside him. The now 10-year-old was watching her mother with shining eyes. A little girl changed my life, Emily continued. Not by being extraordinary in the way the world usually defines it, but by being exactly who she was, deaf, traumatized, skeptical, brilliant, beautiful. She paused. Society told her she was broken. 47 au pairs failed to fix her, because she didn't need to be fixed. She needed to be understood. Emily looked directly at Lily. That little girl taught me that different is not less. Different is just indifferent. And when we stop trying to change people and start trying to understand them, miracles happen. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Emily barely heard it. She was watching Lily sign something to Jonathan. I'm proud of Mama. Jonathan signed back. So am I. After the conference, Emily found a quiet moment with her daughter. You did good, Lily signed. You told our story. Emily pulled her into a hug. It is your story, sweetheart. I was just lucky enough to be part of it. Lily pulled back and looked at her mother seriously. Do you think there are other kids like me? Kids who feel broken because nobody understands them? I know there are, Emily signed. That's why we do this, so fewer kids have to feel that way. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Then she said something that made Emily's heart swell. When I grow up, I want to help kids like me. I want to show them they are not broken. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You already do, sweetheart. Every single day. The Sterling family had grown immensely since that first day in the kitchen. 2 years after the cochlear implant activation, Emily gave birth to their first child together, a boy they named Daniel. The pregnancy had been completely unexpected. Emily was 33 by then, and she had long accepted that her family was complete. Jonathan, Lily, the life they had built together. But the universe had other plans. When Emily told Jonathan the news, his reaction surprised her. He picked her up and spun her around the garden, laughing like a man half his age. Another miracle, he said. You keep bringing miracles into my life. But it was Lily's reaction that moved Emily the most. The 10-year-old had been sitting at the breakfast table when Emily and Jonathan told her. Emily had worried about this moment terribly. Lily had been an only child her entire life. She had experienced so much loss, so much change. How would she handle the news of a sibling? Lily had stared at Emily's stomach for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Then she signed. Will the baby be deaf like me? Emily knelt down so they were eye level. I don't know, sweetheart. The baby might hear. The baby might not. Either way, the baby will be perfect. Lily thought about this. Then she signed, "If the baby is deaf, I will teach the baby everything. How to feel music, how to see sounds, how to be proud." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "And if the baby can hear," Lily smiled, "then I will teach the baby sign language, so we can have secret conversations that nobody else understands." From that moment on, Lily was obsessed with being the best big sister possible. She read books about babies. She practiced signing lullabies. She even asked Victoria to help her knit a tiny blanket. The blanket was lumpy and uneven and absolutely perfect. Daniel was born on a warm spring morning. He came into the world screaming, which the doctors said was a good sign. Lily was the first non-parent to hold him. She sat in the hospital chair, cradling her baby brother with a tenderness that made everyone in the room cry. "Hi, Daniel," she signed, while Emily translated aloud, "I am your big sister Lily. I am going to teach you everything." Daniel, as it turned out, could hear perfectly, but that didn't change a thing, true to her word. Lily taught him sign language before he learned to speak. By the time Daniel was 1, he could sign mama, papa, sister, hungry, and more. By the time he was 2, he was signing full sentences. By the time he was 3, little Kevin was already interpreting for his big sister at Thanksgiving dinners, his tiny hands moving faster than most adults could follow. Lily now had a little brother named Kevin. He was 3 years old and hearing, but he had learned ASL before he learned to speak. To him, communicating with his hands was as natural as breathing. The 2 siblings had their own language, a mix of signs, spoken words, and invented gestures that only they understood. Emily watched them play together and marveled at how naturally children adapted when given the chance. Victoria visited regularly now. She had become fluent in ASL and was Lily's biggest advocate. She funded scholarships for deaf students at Gallaudet University and donated to research programs at Johns Hopkins. She had transformed from an obstacle to an ally. "People can change," she told Emily once. "It just takes the right person to show them how." Emily thought about that often. She had not tried to change Victoria. She had simply shown her another way of seeing the world. The rest had been Victoria's choice. That was the lesson. Really, you could not force understanding on people. You could only offer it. What they did with the offer was up to them. Lily started high school at 14. The decision about where Lily would go to school had been one of the most difficult ones Emily and Jonathan had ever made. There were specialized schools for deaf students like the Model Secondary School for the Deaf in DC, where Lily would be surrounded by others like her, where ASL was the primary mode of communication, where she would never have to explain herself or feel different. But there were also mainstream schools with deaf education programs, where Lily would learn to navigate both the hearing and deaf worlds, where she would face challenges, but also opportunities. In the end, they let Lily choose. "I want to go where I will learn to live in both worlds," she signed, "because that is what my life will be. Both worlds." Emily had never been more proud of her daughter. The transition was not easy. Lily faced ignorance and sometimes cruelty from students who did not understand. There were days when she came home crying, convinced that she did not belong anywhere. But Emily was always there, listening, understanding, reminding Lily that she was not broken, just different. And slowly, things got better. Lily found her tribe, other deaf students who understood her experience, hearing students who took the time to learn ASL, teachers who saw her potential instead of her limitations. By the end of freshman year, Lily was thriving. It was a mainstream school with a robust deaf education program. She had friends who were deaf and friends who were hearing. She moved between worlds with the ease of someone who had been bridging gaps her entire life. She was also, to no one's surprise, an exceptional artist. Her paintings hung in galleries across the city, abstract pieces full of color and movement that seemed to pulse with silent music. Critics called her work groundbreaking, transformative, revolutionary. Lily called it just how I see the world. At 15, she gave her first solo exhibition. The theme was sound. I wanted to show hearing people what sound looks like to me, she explained in her artist statement. Not absence, not silence, but color and vibration and feeling. The centerpiece was a massive canvas called Mama's Voice. It was a swirl of warm golds and soft oranges, with threads of silver running through like ribbons. Emily stood in front of it for a long time. "This is how I see your voice," Lily signed beside her. "Warm, bright, safe." Emily could not speak. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled her daughter into her arms. "I love you," she managed finally. Both signed and spoken. "I love you too, Mama." Always. 20 years after Emily Carter arrived at the Sterling estate, she received an award, the National Medal for Distinguished Service in Deaf Education, the highest honor in her field. She was the first person without a formal degree in deaf education to ever receive it. The ceremony was held in Washington, D.C. Jonathan was there, gray at the temples now, but still looking at Emily like she was the most precious thing in the world. Victoria was there, 90 years old and sharp as ever. Kevin was there with his wife and their newborn daughter, and Lily was there. Dr. Lily Sterling now. A child psychologist specializing in deaf children and their families, continuing the work her mother had started. When Emily took the stage to accept the award, she looked out at the audience and saw hundreds of faces, educators, advocates, parents, children. She saw her past, and she saw the future. 20 years ago, she began. I was kitchen staff who knew how to talk with her hands. I had no idea that skill would change my life, that it would lead me to a little girl who needed understanding, more than fixing, that it would lead me to love, to family, to purpose. She held up the medal. "This award is not mine," she said. "It belongs to every person who ever chose to understand, instead of judge, to every parent who learned ASL for their child, to every teacher who adapted, instead of demanding adaptation, to every child who taught their family a new way of seeing the world." She looked at Lily, who was signing along to every word, and most of all when it belongs to my daughter, who showed me that the impossible is just another word for something no one has tried the right way. Yet, Lily stood up. The audience rose with her, and in that moment, surrounded by applause, she could feel through the floor. Lily signed 3 words that said everything. "Thank you, Mama." Emily signed back. "Thank you, sweetheart, for letting me in." The kitchen staff and the CEO's deaf daughter. It sounded like the beginning of a fairy tale. And maybe it was. But it was also real, messy, and complicated, and full of moments that did not make it into storybooks. Moments like the first time Lily had a meltdown after Emily arrived, when all the progress seemed to disappear, and Emily wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Moments like the fights Emily and Jonathan had about parenting decisions, about how much to push and when to step back, about the balance between protecting Lily and letting her experience the world. Moments like Lily's teenage years, when she questioned everything and pushed against every boundary, including the ones Emily had carefully built. But through all of it, one thing remained constant: love, understanding, the choice to keep trying, even when it was hard. That was the real miracle, not the implant, or the awards, or the gallery exhibitions. The miracle was showing up, day after day, choosing to understand, choosing to connect, choosing love over fear. Emily thought about her brother back home in Chicago, the one who'd inspired her to learn ASL in the first place. He's a teacher now too, married with kids of his own, living proof that being deaf doesn't mean being less. She thought about her mum, working those double shifts at the diner so Emily could have opportunities. Who cried with pride at the graduation? Who held Lily as a baby, whispering blessings in English that the little girl couldn't hear, but somehow understood? She thought about Jonathan, who took a chance on a kitchen staff member, because 47 au pairs had failed, who loved his deaf wife and his deaf daughter with everything he had, who had opened his heart to Emily, even when it terrified him. And she thought about Lily, the little girl who'd hidden in closets, thrown tantrums, and asked if she could see sounds, the young woman who now helped other children see that they were not broken. Some stories have happy endings. This one has an ongoing beginning, because the work is never done. There will always be more children who need understanding, more families who need support, more hearts that need opening. But that's okay, because Emily knows now that change happens one person at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of understanding at a time. And if a simple member of the kitchen staff could change the life of a CEO's deaf daughter, then anyone could change the world. One small act of understanding at a time. What's the bravest thing you've ever done for someone you love? Drop your answer in the comments below, and if this story moved you, the support button is a way to support more stories like this one. Every contribution helps bring these tales of hope and healing to life. The story of Emily and Lily is proof that love speaks louder than words, that understanding bridges every gap, that the impossible is just another word for not yet. Thank you for watching. Until next time.